Zook Garret's frog-related adventure. This is an adventure that I wrote roughly 25 years ago. Originally, it was 4 smaller adventures. I then rewrote it 20 years later for 2014 Dungeons and Dragons. It is written for characters of levels 4 through 6. It stars Zook Garrick, the title character, who is a gnomish illusionist and inventor. He has invented a device called the photonic defrogulator, which does random frog related things. He seeks an item called the really rare radiant radish for no apparent reason. His evil cousin, Zartgarrick, is also seeking this radish, also for no apparent reason, and trying to stop him, along with his forces. Now, this adventure is very whimsical and lighthearted and very random. It fits well as part of or as a side story for Wild Beyond the Witchlight. You can download it on Dungeon Masters Guild, as you can see here. Now, I will review this adventure like any other adventure. It was written some time ago, and I'll show you how it's presented. You may notice if you've played second edition, you may recognize this style of presentation, by the way. The adventure begins at a signpost where there are some information that references things the player characters may encounter during the adventure. But that's also where they may encounter Zoot Garrick himself, who will either hire them or befriend them, or just convince them to go with him on his quest, wherever it may lead. Now, there are roughly 20 locations that the player characters will encounter as they go on this adventure, 21 really, with the final location. The initial 20 locations are presented as random locations. I'll show you where that is here. You go here. You can use a d20 to randomize them, or you can just pick them, choose them, the ones you like, cut the ones you don't. And you can place them either in a straight line on a piece of paper, a crude map, or you can make up your own choices as the players go along on this adventure, depending on how you would like to run it. It is meant to be random. It is meant to be very loose. Now, as the player characters meet Zoo Garrick himself, he's himself rather random and really odd. He does very bizarre things. This is his photonic defrogulator and the various things that it does. Use a d20 for this. It's a very odd device, obviously. Get a description of Zoot Garrick and how he acts. He even acts like a recording or a telephone recording when you first talk to him, and the player characters can push different buttons somewhere, and he will give certain pre-programmed responses. This is meant to be comedic and amusing. The DM doesn't have to use it if you don't want to, but it is amusing. As you finally get to the actual random encounters and you go into them, you'll note some of them are longer than others. Some of them are just brief encounters. Two of the locations are actually just little inns the player characters can stay at to get a long rest or just maybe get a drink. One of them, one of the larger ones, is called Gosland, the All of a Sudden Carnival. There are a number of different rides and attractions the player characters can interact with when they come here, some of which are kind of dangerous and threatening. There are lots of clowns. I'll note, by the way, this is a great location to include some space clowns. These monsters came out long after I wrote and published this adventure, but it would fit really nicely here. There's a duck shooting game, for example. There could be space clowns there. There's a haunted house. There's a liver eating contest. There's an outhouse, because why not? A ring toss game. These are all whimsical things that hark back to the beginning of Wild Beyond the Witchlight again. So if you did use it as part of that adventure, include it somewhere in the middle, especially because the player characters should probably be around 5th level if they play this adventure. Eventually, the player characters do encounter, well, other than the roller coaster, Sprinkle Crazy, which is essentially Gauze, the Wizard of, who is another illusionist who will confront the player characters and possibly attack them for various reasons. mostly because he just doesn't like them and has an issue with Zook Garrick, perhaps. When he does, he will also release a shambling mound that will fight with him. This encounter does not have to happen. It just depends on the interaction of between the player characters and Zook Garrick and him. There is some pre-programmed text here, which is an older style of running an adventure. You don't have to use this text. The DM can make it very random if they want. I give some suggestions. And these languages, by the way, they reference languages in Forgotten Realms. You don't have to use them, of course, but it's a possible encounter here other than potentially using space clowns. As you go further in the adventure, you will find other encounters that are, again, very random. You don't have to use them all. This Bagnora Badash, the Glowing Full, is a paladin. Well, he acts as a guard, essentially, who's on a quest. He's not very important to the adventure. He's just very random. There's the Friendly Dagger Roadside Inn, a rather threateningly odd Kent Inn run by a Githyanki conjurer who, if you stay here, or if your player characters stay here, some odd things might happen. They can also stop and get a drink. Here's some drinks they can get, and get some food, including the prices of said food. There's also some potential information to gather here. Now, there are some other encounters, including a Kenku with some scarecrows, a band of bad guys that are also searching for the really rare radiant radish, which is kind of a more difficult encounter. They're kind of odd as well. There's a much more pleasant inn called the Only Way Inn that is described as the only real safe inn. And, the prices of their various drinks. Many of these drinks, by the way, came from, I believe, the older Baldur's Gate games. They may seem familiar. This adventure originally took place on the Western Heartlands, somewhere around Coram Orp, when I originally ran the first of the four original adventures. When I rewrote it, it's meant to fit in anywhere. So that you could put it in the middle of your campaign as long as the players are the right level if you'd like. It's meant to work like that. As you go further in, you encounter Fran Garret, Zoot Garrick's third cousin, twice removed, who is more of an NPC that might be able to help you. Politically correct zombies, who are zombies that have no interest in actually eating you and just cutting your hair and taking your fingernail clippings and rotting teeth and other things. The ghost of Gary Coleman, for some reason, a guy named Thack Zero, or sort of Thacko, he's odd. There's a theme here. A fellow named Falker Shaite, a bandit. Again, you don't have to use all these encounters. Many of them are just meant to be random things. I would suggest using the Rain of Frogs when it just starts raining frogs. This fits the theme very nicely because Zook is terrified and frogs in every way. There's a Bullywug encounter, which I would recommend being one of the encounters the player characters encounter. This is one of the older Bullywug images that's available from Dungeon Masters Guild to use when you publish adventures through them. There's Rink Higgins, an overall mean guy, a thug you encounter. Most of these encounters, by the way, are fairly easy. One or two of them are a bit harder. There's a miniature cow tipping situation that could happen. There's this encounter with these two ladies of the evening. Go through it in detail if you'd like. There's Zip Hippity Hop's House of Horrors, which involves some animated garden gnomes who are treated as homunculus, more of an NPC who may or may not give any useful information. There's a mystic tattoo parlor where Gith Zerai might tattoo the player characters, which could also give you some interesting information. And eventually you will encounter, and probably should encounter, Zark Garrick, Zook's evil cousin, who is a transmuter on a giant fly. Well, it's really an aerohydraulic thermal gyro zeppelin, which acts like a giant fly, effectively, which the player characters could claim for their own in the adventure, or it could be destroyed. The DM could put in a self destruct feature. He does have a wand of fireballs on note, and he's meant to be one of the main bosses here in the adventure, at least during the traveling and random segment of the adventure. Later in the adventure, there is a larger segment, location 20, Journey to the Center of a Radish. When the player characters get here, they encounter a giant radish. There's a map for this, by the way, made in Dungeon Draft, where they will encounter giant centipedes and maybe an adult Karen crawler and some potential larvae. And then finally, the adventure concludes with the Temple of Frogulation. There's a map for this as well. It's essentially a stone pyramid in the middle of anywhere. There are some frogs here, amongst other things. You see location 2C, all these little things here are all frogs. It's a very simple dungeon crawl area the player characters can explore. They come in through the bottom here. There is a blue slade, which is, a rather dangerous enemy for the player characters to fight. At this point, it should be a decent challenge for them to fight. There's an image of a blue slade. And as they go further, there's some spiked pits. And finally, the temple of or the chamber of the Froghemoth, a Froghemoth, the final boss in this adventure, which might be kind of a challenge for the player characters. The DM thinks it's a good idea. Some of the NPCs that the player characters meet in the adventure might want to tag along to be here or suddenly show up, because the Froghemoth might be difficult for a group of, say, 4th level characters. But if you have a larger group that's roughly 6th level, they might be able to handle this fight, depending on how they're built. Now, as you conclude the adventure, Zook will find the really rare Radiant Radish. You'll find the Treasury of Frogs with some, treasure in it, amongst other things. And the adventure will eventually conclude with the epilogue, The Lavender Brick Road, and some dialogue from Zook Garret of where things could go, or should go, or probably won't go. And then the adventure will just meander off into the distance. Or the players could reach one of the ends in the very end. It's really up to the DM. This adventure was designed to be somewhat random, obviously, and you can probably get a good feel for it based on the descriptions I've given you. Overall, if you like an adventure that is very whimsical and random like that, it might be the adventure for you. After reviewing it and after writing it twice now and running it overall, well, running the 4 original parts of it, I would rate this adventure a 4 out of 5. I've had some reviews from other DMs who have run it, who have noted that they really enjoyed the character of Zoot Garret and the open-ended nature of the adventure. It's really one of those adventures that can go whatever direction the DM wants. Now, if you like these adventure reviews and you want to see more of them, please like this video and please subscribe for more content.